this video, I'm going to show you how to learn every single major scale on the piano, hands together, as quickly and efficiently as possible. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Jonathan, and here at the South Shore Piano School YouTube channel, we're all about supporting you on your piano journey through lessons and tutorials that make the whole process fun and, most importantly, simple. The secret to learning scales hands together on piano is focusing on the places where both hands play the same notes or the same groups of notes with the same fingers or groups of fingers. I'll show you by going through every single one. I'm going to show you the scales in the order of the circle of fifths, starting at the top with C major and then going clockwise through all the sharp scales. So that's 8 scales going all the way through C sharp major. Then we'll go back and go counterclockwise through the flats, including the 3 enharmonic pairs of keys at the bottom where there's some overlap. Let's start at the top with C major. We'll start with C major, which is all white keys. Now the fingering trick for this scale will work the same both going up and coming down, and often I refer to the hand that's ahead as the leading hand and the hand that's behind as the trailing hand. So we'll get started with 5 in the left hand, 1 in the right hand, and then you're going to focus on the first point where both hands line up with the third finger on E. At this point, the leading hand is going to cross with the thumb, left hand just keeps going. Now when the left hand runs out of fingers, you're going to cross the third finger over so that the third fingers line up again. And then it's just next finger, next finger. Coming back, it's the same exact trick. So coming back down, 3s line up, but now my left hand is my leading hand. So that hand will cross the thumb under, right hand, trailing hand continues. And then when my trailing hand runs out, third finger crosses over, so 3s line up again, next finger, next finger. C major, hands together. Now the exciting thing is the next 4 scales on the sharp side of the circle of fifths will use the same exact fingerings. So we'll continue now with G major, starting on G, all white keys except for F sharp. We'll play F sharp instead of F, same exact fingerings. 3s line up, leading hand crosses, trailing hand runs out, 3s line up again, next finger, next finger. Coming back, 3s line up, leading hand crosses, trailing hand runs out, 3s line up again, next finger, next finger. That's G major. Next up is D major, and remember with the circle of fifths, each new scale is going to add a sharp that builds off the sharps of the previous scale. So G major had the F sharp in it. That means D major will also have F sharp, but we're going to add C sharp. And once again, same fingerings. 3s line up, 3s line up, 3s, 3s. There's D major. Next will be A major, again following the same exact fingerings. This time we're adding G sharp in addition to the F sharp and the C sharp of the previous scales. We'll start with 5 and 1, 3s line up, leading hand crosses, trailing hand runs out, 3s line up again, next finger, next finger. When we come back, 3s line up, leading hand crosses, trailing hand runs out, 3s line up again, next finger, next finger. There's A major. We have one more scale that's going to use the same fingerings before we have to change it up a little bit, and that's E major. That's 4 sharps adding the D sharp in addition to the F, C, and G sharps of the previous keys. So once again, 5 and 1, 3s line up, 3s line up again, same trick coming back, 3s line up, 3s line up, next finger, next finger. Next up is B major, and for this and the next 2 scales, we're going to use a different fingering trick. For these, we're going to use what I call finger groups. This is where the same groups of fingers in both hands will play the same groups of keys when you play the scale. I'll show you in this first one, and then it'll apply to F sharp and C sharp major. So B major has 5 sharps that's going to add A sharp in addition to the 4 previous sharps. For this one, you're going to actually start with 4 in the left hand and 1 in the right hand. And before we actually play the scale, I want to show you this finger grouping thing I'm talking about. So you're going to use fingers 2 and 3 collectively on C sharp and D sharp. Thumbs will line up together on the E. And then these fingers, or this finger group, 2s, 3s, and 4s, will line up on the 3 black keys, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp to get us to that last note. So for most of the scale, except for the first note and the last note, there's always something in common between the hands. So going through that scale, 4 in the left hand, 1 in the right hand, 2s and 3s, thumbs, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Just go to the next finger, and then we just follow that grouping back. 2s, 3s, and 4s, thumbs, 2s and 3s, next finger. For these kinds of finger grouping scales, you can also do this clustering trick where you play those groups together, kind of like this. Starting note, 2s and 3s, thumbs, 2s, 3s, and 4s, last note, and then follow it all back. Next is F sharp major, which sounds menacing because every single note is sharp except for B, but again, it follows the same exact fingering trick. This time, these fingers will line up on F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, thumbs will line up on B, 2s and 3s line up on C sharp, D sharp, and thumbs will line up on, we're not going to call this F, but we're going to call it E sharp. That's what we call that in the key of F sharp major before we get to the last note. So going through the scale, 2, 3s, and 4s, thumbs, 2s and 3s, thumbs again, next finger, and then working it back, 2s and 3s, thumbs, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then finally we have C sharp major, that's where every single note is sharp, and once again it's going to use this same fingering trick. So 2s and 3s on C sharp, D sharp, thumbs on E sharp, 2s, 3s, and 4s on F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and then thumbs on B sharp before that final C sharp. 2s and 3s, thumbs, 2s, 3s, and 4s, thumbs, next note, and then we just follow it all back. Now we're going to go back to the top of the circle of fifths and go the opposite direction, the flat side, starting with F major, which only uses the B flat. And this one's actually going to use a fingering trick that's fairly similar to the C sharp major that we just did with this whole finger grouping thing. We'll start with 5 in the left hand, 1 in the right hand, except here we're going to use fingers 2, 3, and 4 on G, A, B flat. So this sort of cluster here. Thumbs will line up on C, and then we'll use 2s and 3s collectively on D and E before landing on that top F, which we will top out on the 4th finger. Sometimes people get a little confused thinking they messed something up. You will top out on the 4th finger for the F major scale. So starting note, 2s, 3s, and 4s, thumbs, 2s and 3s, last note, and then following that back, 2s and 3s, thumbs, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and then the last note. Next up is the B flat major scale, which is going to build on the previous scale. This will use B flat and E flat. And this one uses sort of a unique fingering trick. You'll start with 3 in the left hand and 2 in the right hand. We're going to try to get to this finger group. We're using 1s and 2s collectively on C and D. And then the trick is, as you're approaching a black key, as you're approaching a flat, whichever hand is ahead is just going to go to the next finger. That'll either be a 3 or a 4. And then the trailing hand is just going to do the opposite. So if the leading hand plays a 3, trailing hand will play a 4. If the leading hand plays a 4, trailing hand will play 3. And then to get out of that flat, the leading hand will cross the thumb and the trailing hand will keep going. Let's try it. So 3 in the left hand, 1 in the right hand, 1s and 2s. Now right hand's about to play 3, so left hand, trailing hand will cross with 4. Right hand or the leading hand crosses the thumb to get out of it. Left hand, trailing hand continues. Now my right hand's about to play a 4, so my left hand will cross with 3. Now coming back, same idea, but now as we're approaching the E flat, my left hand's the leading hand, so I'm going to play the next finger, that's a 4, so my trailing hand will cross with a 3. And then my left hand leading hand needs to cross the thumb to get out of it, trailing hand continues to get us back to the tonic. Next is E flat major scale, and this is another one of those scales where there's always something in common between the hands. This is adding A flat in addition to the B flat and E flat of the previous flat keys. You'll start with 3rd finger in the left hand, 2nd finger in the right hand. And then for F and G, you're going to use 1s and 2s collectively. Next is A flat, B flat. You'll use 3s and 4s collectively. And then you'll use 1s and 2s again for C and D. And then just a quick crossover to grab that top E flat. And then just follow it all backwards. 1s and 2s, 3s and 4s, 1s and 2s, and then the last note. This is another one of those scales where clustering can be helpful. So starting note, 1s and 2s, 3s and 4s, 1s and 2s, last note, and then following it back. Next is A flat major, which personally I think is one of the trickier ones, but again, if you really focus on those commonalities between the hands, I think you'll be fine. This is adding D flat, so that's a 4th flat in addition to the previous 3. We're going to start with 2s and 3s in both hands on A flat, B flat. Thumbs are going to line up on C. Now this is the most important part. We're going to aim for 3rd fingers to line up here on this E flat. So for that to happen, the left hand has to cross over 4th finger to D flat as the right hand continues to the next finger. So here we've lined up our E flats, then we'll use 1s and 2s collectively, and then we'll just grab that top note. And then we just follow this back, 1s and 2s, again aiming for the 3s on that E flat, next finger, thumbs on C, and then 2s and 3s for the last 2 notes. Now starting with D flat major, you've actually already learned these scales. You've just learned their enharmonics, because once we get to 5, 6, and 7 sharps, we have the sharp name for the scale as well as the flat name for the scale. This isn't a thing with the other keys. That's only for these 3 at the bottom of the circle of fifths. So in this case, D flat major has 5 flats, and we call the keys D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. But you've already practiced this as C sharp major. We just call the notes C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. So the fingering trick there will be exactly the same. 2s and 3s on the 2 black keys, D flat, E flat, thumbs to F, 2s, 3s, and 4s, G flat, A flat, B flat, thumbs to C, and then we just grab that top D flat and then follow it back. 2s, 3s, and 4s, thumbs, 2s, and 3s. Now we're going to head to G flat major, which is the same exact notes as F sharp major. Here, every single note will be flat except for F. Same fingering trick. 2s, 3s, and 4s. Thumbs line up on C flat, 2s and 3s on D flat, E flat, thumbs to F, grab the last G flat, and then follow it all back. 2s and 3s, thumbs, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and you're done. And then finally, C flat major will use the same fingering tricks as B major, except for this scale, every single note is flat. So we'll start 4th finger in the left hand, thumb in the right hand, C flat, 2s and 3s on D flat, E flat, thumbs on F flat, 2s, 3s, and 4s on G flat, A flat, B flat, and then the last note. And then we just follow that back. 2s, 3s, and 4s, thumbs, 2s, and 3s, and then the last note. Did you find this helpful, or is this similar to how you've learned scales in the past? I'd love to hear about your experience in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.